Welcome to AFINNity, a conversational podcast series that shares the thoughts, observations, and insights of professional marketers working within teams of specialists worldwide. AI is the hottest topic shaping the industry right now, from Google's launch of Bard to Meta platforms introducing new advertising products that use AI to help marketers' campaigns work more efficiently. The AI sector has hit a fresh peak of hype driven by the popularity of software systems like ChatGPT. In this episode, we're going to delve into the impact of artificial intelligence. We'll explore how AI technologies are revolutionizing customer insights, personalization, and campaign optimization. Our experts will also look at the ethical considerations surrounding AI, such as data privacy and algorithmic bias. Join us today as we uncover the opportunities, challenges, and future implications of AI that's shaping the marketing and communications landscape. So my name's Elliot King, and I'm in London.
I am Joyce Leong. I'm from Singapore.
I'm Thomas Morris, also in London.
I'm Joshua Wang in Singapore.
Fantastic to be with you all today and looking forward to delving into this really interesting topic. So first, AI technologies are revolutionizing customer insights, personalization, and campaign optimization. That's a statement. How true do we think that is? And what are our thoughts on that statement?
I can start on that one from a customer insights perspective. So I think what I'd say at the outset is that we've been using AI for many years in terms of insights and research. It's not something that is new to us. We would use it for social analysis, audience segmentation, primary survey work. I guess the word that I would question in that statement, Elliot, is revolution. And I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying that I'm an avid user of AI. I think there are huge opportunities, but I don't think it's necessarily a revolution. It's more of an evolution. Is it becoming more powerful? Yes, absolutely. Look at ChatGPT and what it can do now, and we didn't have that a few years ago. Do we have more data availability? Yes. But we're not necessarily seeing major leaps forward in terms of what we can do from a kind of customer insights perspective. The analysis and the insight we're driving is similar to what we were doing before, albeit we have greater data. But where we are seeing an evolution is the speed that we can get to those answers. So AI allows us to get to those answers far quicker than we could do before. But I would still question whether that's a revolution. Like for me, that's an evolution in our approach, and it's a positive one, but not a revolution.
So evolution rather than revolution from Thomas. What are your thoughts, Joyce or Josh?
I'll have to agree with Thomas because to an extent, we've actually been using that already in a lot of the advertising that we do, right? It's a lot of the ad platforms do have that in some measure where we're able to use that to discern audience preferences, behaviors, and look at all that data and analyze it in order to make the campaigns more effective. I think it's really come into a lot more focus because of ChatGPT and all the hype and excitement around that. And for people who've not maybe been exposed to AI before, this is the first exposure to it, and this would seem like a revolution to them. But if you've been working with that technology for a while, it's like Thomas suggests, it's actually an evolution, and it's made things, obviously it's progressed, it's made things a lot more efficient, maybe optimizing performances across a lot of fields in a lot of ways, but it's not something that sort of just appeared overnight and is suddenly a possibility that wasn't there yesterday.
So I think an interesting observation of the both of you, or if I'm reading between the lines and stuff, for the longest time, AI has just operated in the background, right? But this is like ChatGPT was a huge milestone in the public consciousness of how AI can work. And ChatGPT, I think, represents one of the first times where people can actively choose how AI can operate for them as opposed to on behalf of them. And so I think of existing applications of AI, whether or not that is identify birds in a picture or comment on this grammar structure of the thing that I'm writing, you can actually, it's a lot more customizable. And I think that's really raised the public consciousness of what AI is and what it can do.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. It sounds like our collective opinion is that it's more of a consumer revolution, and potentially it's a concept that's become very newsworthy in the last year or so. But what we're saying is that actually these tools behind the scenes have been in operation for quite a while now.
Just on that, Elliot, I think one area where it could be revolutionary is in creative execution. I'm a researcher, so I shouldn't be talking about creativity probably, but I've been on certain podcasts where they've talked about AI and been to a number of kind of research conferences. And what I see is like the potential to use it for creative execution, perhaps not in terms of branding, but if we think of like imagery for adverts or content, I think there's a huge opportunity there. It'd be interesting to hear if you guys have seen that and what you think about the opportunities in that space from a marketing perspective.
I think that's a little bit of a controversial topic as well, because we get obviously going to get a lot of pushback from the creatives saying that the work that I do isn't something that AI could replicate. And there are obviously certain advantages to be able to do that sort of generative AI output, right? And I have seen examples of that. But there's also people who've used that very creatively to demonstrate how generative AI in that aspect isn't necessarily at the stage where it can replicate what creatives do on a regular basis. I've seen campaigns where they've tried to basically use generative AI, where they take, say, for example, a Chinese sounding dish, put that into generative AI to try to generate that dish in the graphics. And the kind of images that the AI throws out, right, it's totally off. And in some cases, very horrific because they've done a literal translation or literal interpretation of what that dish is called in Mandarin and tried to replicate that in graphics. That's one of the ways where it's a creative use of AI, and it totally demonstrates how AI does not, in this case, live up to its full potential, but there are still uses for it.
Really interesting. And I guess it leads us on to this next topic, which is the ethical considerations around AI and specifically the impact on data privacy for consumers and obviously algorithmic. We as marketers, obviously, and we've heard a little bit about that already, are tempted to use these tools to help us be more effective in our job. But I'm interested in the panel's opinion on how important are the ethical considerations and how much of an impact will they have on how the marketing industry adopts some of these tools.
For us, from a research perspective, bias is a key concern. If we're going to use AI for survey selection or analysis, or if it's then being used within marketing execution, we need to be very careful about bringing in unintended bias. So when Joyce is talking about generative AI, that speaks to like how the AI works. And that means that it's only going to be as subjective as the data that you train it on. So if you think about ChatGPT, that's been trained on the writing of humans, past, present. It's been trained extensively, but it's still based on human literature and human thoughts. And humans are inherently biased. So you will inevitably create somewhat of an unintended bias in that AI system. And there are plenty of cases of ChatGPT kind of discriminating against certain groups in the answers that it may provide because of that bias. And I think some of those are pretty obvious, but we really need to interrogate the more subtle biases that may be involved in AI. And I think there's still quite a bit of work to be done there.
I think that's a really interesting point. So what, if I've understood correctly, you're saying is that it's not so much AI itself that's biased, it's the way that these AI systems are programmed, and it becomes a problem because AI can obviously magnify any of those biases that are built into the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a human is effectively starting out by training the AI system, and it needs to have a data source at the start that it is trained on. If you provide the AI with a biased data source, you create a biased generative AI system. And the challenge is try and find a data source that isn't biased to train it on, because most of it's, especially when we're talking about language-based models, they've been created by humans. So the bias is inherent in the system. Most of the time, I think you can wean that out over time, but it is certainly dangerous. And it's something like we have to be aware of. And everyone, even the general public, should be aware of those dangers.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of examples, I think, where people have complained the fact that the information that AI provides isn't always accurate. they can make up stuff. And you have to discern what is the truth. And you, to a certain extent, depending on the prompts and what you give the AI, you could skew them towards one side or the other.
There's also, I think, as it relates to ethical considerations, this idea of copyright is who owns the work that generative AI produces, and is it owned by the people that created the training data set?
What I will add to Joshua's point is that there are professional ethical considerations there also. In when Joshua's talking about what the platform was originally trained on, you also need to be aware that it's consistently being trained over time. From a research perspective, if we're putting client data into an open source model, you really need to think about how that system may use your data and your client's data. And ChatGPT, now there is an option to make sure that they don't train their system on your data. You can have it in a closed environment, but it's a consideration that kind of, certainly from a research perspective, we need to be aware of.
It's considered a best practice here that to never use confidential privileged information, even to hypothetically test it in ChatGPT or anything.
There's already, I think, been a case where one of the brands leaked some confidential information using ChatGPT without thinking it through. And it's already come out in public notice. So I think that's going to be really important to think about how AI is going to be used in a workplace. What are the governance for it? What are the parameters? How would you use it? And just provide that kind of framework and education to the teams that are using it, just to make sure that we are aware and we keep clear from being caught in this sort of ethical and legal issues.
Some really interesting points there. And it's absolutely clear that from an organization perspective and from a consumer's perspective, there's going to be significant challenges. And I imagine a big job for regulators over the coming years. But moving on now, I just want to, let's assume that as an industry, as society, we're able to overcome some of those problems. I want you to imagine for a moment a future where we've, as consumers, we have this personal AI that's walking around with us. From a Marcom's perspective, that personal AI, how much of a target for marketing campaigns does the AI become as much as consumers? And beyond that, what is the medium and longer term future that we see for AI from a Marcom's perspective?
I think right now, a lot of consumers consider like ads a little bit intrusive in terms of where it appears and how it appears, right? Because of the data we're getting about preferences, about behaviors, that if the ads are provided, it is provided at a value in a very personalized, very customized and relevant way to the audiences, so that it becomes a little less intrusive and a little bit more helpful for the audiences at mind. And when that happens, essentially, right, it's a meeting of both needs in the sense that, yes, brands want to promote the products and services, and technically, consumers do want to consume those products and services, but they want to do it at their own time, at their own pace, on their own terms. So if AI is able to provide that bridge where we are able to provide the ads in a manner that's acceptable and comfortable and relevant to the audiences, I think that would be a good sort of future to move towards.
I think that Josh, you're making a really good point there. And for a while now, advertising has had to tread this careful balance of personalization, potentially great for consumer, but so at what point does it become invasive? We've just got a couple of minutes now. So I'm going to ask a very specific question, and I would like each of the panel members to give me a 2-sentence answer to this question. So the latest version of Alexa, if it's installed and allowed to run in the home, will monitor our shopping list that we have in our Amazon basket. And at the point where any of those products in the list or in our wanted list, there's a discount applied to that product, it will announce that over the speaker and give us the option to buy immediately. So my question is, that future and a similar future for other systems, is that good or bad?
What you just explained there sounds brilliant to me, Elliot. I use AI a lot in terms of kind of personal assistance anyhow. So I have a calendar which is AI driven, and that tells me what I'm time blocking for each element of my day. And I do the same if I exercise. I'm using AI apps. So if I have an assistant within my home that's telling me that I need milk and is going to order it for me, I'm personally all for that. I guess I haven't fully considered the privacy implications of that, but I'm all for an easy life, and that sounds like an easy life to me. So yeah, sign me up.
So a thumbs up from Thomas. What do the rest of our panel think?
I think it comes down to, honestly, consent, right? So if there's full disclosure that this is what you're opting into, and this is a convenience that you want in your life, and you said yes to that, then there's no issue. The problem is going to be if the consumer is unaware. You surprise them with this thinking, oh, they're going to be wowed by this, but they don't actually want that. That's where the issues are. Personally, for me, I like it. There was one thing in terms of the technology that Amazon has that was always very excited about, that they could personalize the experience for me and sort of make recommendations that I actually wanted.
I think I'll probably represent a slightly different perspective because I'm all for targeted ads. Don't show me an ad that I don't care about. Show me an ad that I want to see. But I'm also all for having the power, and I think this goes into Joyce's point about consent, having the power to choose what data I don't want to share. And I can tell you for me personally, I live on my own. I definitely don't want to hear some disembodied voice telling me about a discount about something in the middle of the day. I would freak out, right? But I think this goes beyond our purview of being just marketers. It really touches upon a deeply societal vein and the relationship between things like society, our institutions, and the government and authorities and stuff like that. And I think there's always going to be a consideration of, you start now at products, but then is there the possibility that it switches into policing ideologies or then policing thoughts and beliefs? And of course, I'm going to reference 1984, but this is the fear that people have, which is completely understandable. So I think we have to take that into account.
So Josh, thank you so much for that cliffhanger that you've left us with. Are we developing the ultimate Big Brother? So thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Josh. This has been the AFINNity podcast series from Fin Partners. We'll look forward to seeing you again next time. You've been listening to the AFINNity podcast, brought to you by Fin Partners, specialists working in offices worldwide. Now we'd love to hear what you think. Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments here or send us an email. You can find all of the contact details at finpartners.com.